All right, good morning and welcome to the Friday morning, August 26th edition. Hey, we start college football tonight, folks. We changed the narrative. Jimmy, you remember yesterday, Dudley Dawson said, we're not calling it week 0. It's week 1. They're playing, they're keeping score, and the tickets are going to cost money. So we're going to talk about college football, which is what we love doing here every day. Rob Brown with you live from Red River Ford Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas. Jimmy Hodge will be joining us here in just a second. We'll kick off with Jason Caldwell of Inside the Auburn Tigers. 23 years, boots on the ground. I don't know of anybody that goes to more high school games, does more research, homework, and in my industry, we call it due diligence than Jason Caldwell, Mark Murphy, Philip Martin. So that whole team he's a part of Inside the Auburn Tigers and 24/7 Sports. Segment number 2, Dan Matthews, executive producer of the Chuck Oliver Show, Southern Sports Today, checks in from Atlanta. Top of hour number 2, we'll be joined by Bo Carter out in Dallas, Fort Worth. Long time worked with the Big 12 office, the Football Foundation, the baseball writers. Always a lot of good stuff when Bo Carter's on. And then the man who asks the best questions, you see him on SEC Network all the time, Olin Buchanan out in College Station, TexAgs.com. We'll be with you 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 9 to 11 a.m. east of the Chattahoochee. And Jason, you know, people forget Lee County, where Auburn is, it's right there on the Chattahoochee, the backwaters. Now you can get to Georgia if you want to swim across the river. But, hey, it's college football time, folks, and we're going to be launching starting Monday. We'll be on in Alexander City, part of the Radio Alabama group, Lee Perryman and the great folks down there. 96.3 Kicks FM. Monday through Friday, they'll have the show on 6 to 8 p.m. And then Saturdays, the round table, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. But we'll be doing the live show like we always do, 8 to 10, Monday through Saturday, Sidelines.live. Jason, thanks for taking time to join us. And look, you can feel it 192 hours away from kickoff for the first Auburn game. There are a lot of narratives out there, but only Auburn can write its story. So what have been takeaways from this past week with practice and on and off the field that you can make people aware of? Because my phone is blowing up. People are saying, I want to hear what Jason has to say. Shut up, Rob.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not game week yet, but it's been game week really for this team since about Tuesday. The first game you can do that. So you've had camp time. You've had time to have a couple scrimmages, do those things. It's not like it was 20 years ago where you had a camp for a month. You had 2 weeks of 2-a-days and had a 3-a-day and had 3 or 4 scrimmages. It's very different than that now. And it's like we're talking about with the quarterback position. That's where everybody wants to start. And you've got a couple of times. You got really 2 scrimmage situations to kind of show what you can do. And then coaches go, look, we got to start moving forward. And that's the case with Auburn. TJ Finley has been the most consistent guy of the group. I would expect him to be the starter when that's, I would expect that to happen on Monday. Okay. When we get depth charts come out. I think Robbie Ashford's going to be the second guy. I think Robbie Ashford's going to have opportunities to run the offense and do some of those things in these first couple of games. And, potentially maybe even Zach Calzada gets in the mix a little bit, but I think it's going to be more of those first 2 guys to see what they can do. And that's kind of where it starts, but that's camp. And that's really the big news. Everybody's like, why haven't they named a quarterback yet? Well, there's no reason to. We had Brian Harsin on Saturday. We haven't had him again, other than the captain, the night the captains were announced. And he's not going to name a quarterback then to take away from that experience. And other than his radio show, we won't have him again until Monday. So, I think we'll see that Monday. My guess is that we'll hear who the quarterback is. We'll get a depth chart and probably talk to TJ Finley at that time as well.
Well, what I see is true competition in the quarterback room. In the past, we were told there was, but I don't think there really was. And now it's legitimate. And I think all 3 of these guys feel like they have a chance to be the man. And that trickles down throughout the team to every position. Want to switch gears now over to the tight end room. Auburn is deep there. Then you've got a hybrid Landon King. And everybody is talking about Auburn's receivers are not good and all. Well, don't tell them that. And I think they've gotten better, hopefully, under Ike Hilliard. that there's a good chance that they're going to be better just with him coaching them. But talk about how Auburn might want to use the tight ends like receivers, and that would be something that I believe would give Auburn an advantage, kind of like what Georgia does.
Yeah. Can you stretch the field? That's the question right now. And that's what Georgia was able to do last year with Brock Bowers. I don't know that Auburn has anybody like Brock Bowers because I don't know if there's anybody else like him. I mean, he's a little bit different than Kyle Pitts was. He's a wide receiver and a tight end body. Auburn doesn't have one of those guys. They've got a solid, tight end group, and I think they're going to catch more balls, do those things. Landon King is about 215 right now. He is a wide receiver. He's all invested in that role. He works those guys outside. So I think you look at it and can they find some bigger plays out of that group? Last year they caught balls. They did some things. There wasn't a ton of big plays out of that group, and that's really whether it's tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, whoever it is. That's what you got to do. It's so hard in this league to have a 15-play drive, get into the red zone, get a first down and score and take 7 plays. It's hard to do that because you're going to have a mistake along the way. You got to find a way to create explosive plays. If this Auburn offense can do that, then it's going to help them out tremendously. If they can't, then it's going to put a whole lot of pressure on them to excel and to not have any breakdowns, in a 10, 12, 14 play drive. That's hard to ask.
Yeah. And you hope you have someone. We all remember Evan Ingram at Ole Miss not too long ago. He was probably 225, 6'3", Landon King's at 215, but something about him with his height and all, he is a really, really good athlete. And him making the switch like that tells me he's a team player too, because he didn't hit the portal. He could have and say, well, I want to be a tight end or whatever. But I love guys like that are willing to help the team. You get a team full of guys like that, you can beat anybody on your schedule. That's just history proves me right. Jimmy, jump in here.
Well, I don't know if anybody can claim that they have not only one tight end that matches up with what Georgia has, but they, in addition to Brock Bowers, how many teams can say they have a player with the physical attributes and athletic ability of Darnell Washington and Eric Gilbert? I mean, that's NFL level there, or at least a future NFL ability. So, and along with, Georgia's running game, which, they really feature, that kind of puts them just in a different discussion. But, the Auburn tight ends really had a solid year last year, Schenker especially. So you clearly want to maximize in your offense the weapons that you do have that are a proven commodity. And, I'm guessing, Jason, that in these first 2 games, normally you don't want to show Penn State very much, but this might be a situation where you have 2 real live game auditions for your wide receivers to give them an opportunity to see how they react and perform in real life game situations.
Yeah, if you'd been in an offense for 4 or 5 years and had, a 3-year starter at quarterback and do some of that, then you can hold some things back a little bit. Yeah. You got audit. I mean, quarterback. I think you have a starter, but I don't know that it's written in ink. I think that's a battle that could still change depending on what happens in these first couple of games. And so you gotta run and play your offense. And for the wide receivers, they need that work. Everybody does. You got to go out and there's obviously things you'll hold back because you add to an offense as you go throughout the season. But I don't think you go out here with just a basic shell of your offense, because those guys have to go work on things. They've got to improve. You got to take some shots in the offense, in the passing game. And so, I don't know that you can afford to go out and not do a whole lot because you got to see what these guys can do.
Yeah. And Jason, look, I know it was 2017, but that was a pretty damn good Auburn team until Kerryon Johnson got hurt at the end of the Alabama game. But Mercer gave Auburn all they can handle in 2017. What's the scouting report on this team? Because with the portal, you better watch out because they're guys you remember they signed, you lose track of them, and they've popped up at a Mercer, and you're in a dogfight and playing a full 60 before you know it.
Yeah, this is one where physically you're going to be better than they are. You're going to have more depth. You're going to have more size. You get a little bit of a taste. They actually play tomorrow night. They play Morehead State in this first week, so get a chance to kind of see them a little bit, see what they're all about. They got some pretty good skill players. Now, they're not big, huge physical guys, but as we've seen, if you turn the ball over, if you're sloppy, this is a game that could get sideways on you a little bit, and that's what you want to avoid right now. If you're Auburn, you got so many hurdles coming up on this schedule that this is an opportunity to go out and play some young guys to get some of those guys some reps. Robbie Ashford's a guy they need to get on the field. They need to get him on the field. They need to get him in the offense, running the offense, and just see what he can do. Because, we've heard of, well, you can't tackle him. You can't do those things. Well, now this is an opportunity to see what he can do, but you got to go out and execute in every phase of the game to be able to take those opportunities. And that's the first step.
Yeah. Jason, switching now to the offensive line, these guys for Auburn are a lot older. They've been there together. Look at the journey of Austin Troxell. I mean, 3 or 4 major surgeries, and he still keeps coming back. Sometimes when guys have been through so much together collectively, it all clicks in that one season. I go back to that 2010 when Auburn clinched the national championship against Oregon. Auburn's offensive line, Ryan Pugh and Zimba and Mike Berry and all those guys had a combined 176 starts among them. And the next year you had one of those 5 coming back and you saw the drop off. Could you see a case where Auburn's offensive line has a really, really a much better year at least? And I hate to say this because most people in life take the negative way out. I don't. You don't. But I wonder, I'm just curious with this offensive line, with the age and experience, if you think they can really come together this year and have a good year.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to take the negative on this one. If you add Cam Newton in 2010, that makes them a lot better team. And that's the thing right now. Do you have playmakers? Can they run the football? That's still the biggest question because they've got to be able to run the football against the better teams on the schedule. And you're more than likely going to do that without a guy that started 33 games in the middle and Nick Brahms. That's a big deal. That guy's played 40 games in his career. Tate Johnson has played 11 snaps. If he's your center, he's played 11 total snaps. Now you got a lot of experience around him, which will be really beneficial. And it's another reason why these first couple of games are big opportunities if you take advantage of them for Auburn, and that's where it starts. And so now you got Brandon Council, who's a 7th-year guy. He's played a lot of football. Keandre Jones, Cam Stutz. There's some guys out there. Killian Zaire is an older guy, even though he doesn't have a ton of experience. But you got Austin Troxell and Alex Jackson. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have played a bunch of football, but in the middle, you're going to be new. And so that's going to create its own set of challenges for this offensive line. But I do believe that it's a group that has the chance to improve. You got to stay healthy because there's not a ton of depth, not a ton of proven depth behind that group of guys. So that's where it starts. But I just keep going back to last year. They had 600 yards rushing in the first 2 games, and then they averaged 114 yards a game after that.
Yeah.
If you can't run the football in this offense and in most offenses, then you're going to struggle. And that we'll look back here and it won't take us long, 5 or 6 weeks. We'll know, what the outlook of this Auburn offense is by the way they can run the football.
Yeah, and the strength and conditioning is so important. And and I know Brahms is he's done, I guess, his football career.
Well, yeah, I mean, nothing's official yet, but it sure seems like they're planning to move forward without him.
Yeah, and I hate that, and I know he's got a career ahead of him, and he's played in a lot of games, and you just can't make up 40 games versus 11 snaps, and that's just the scenario where you don't want to be. But when we come back, we're going to take a quick break here in just a few seconds, and I know Jimmy's got some more questions for you. Want to flip over to the defense. We know Auburn can run the ball. You You got Tank Bigsby, Jarquez Hunter, Sean Jackson, Damari Austin. It looks like some talent there, but again, it all starts up front. Okay, we're listening to Sidelines here on this Friday morning. We got Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers with Jimmy Hodge and me. We're going to take a quick station break. We're live from Red River Ford Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas. They're open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department. Saturday mornings, 7:30 to 12:30. Right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jimmy, I know you've got some questions on that Auburn defense, and that's just during the break. What was the injury one more time with Jeff Brahms? Is it his foot or his lower back?
Yeah, you're asking me that one?
Yes.
It's a knee. It's a knee that's he had cleaned up and that cost him the bowl game last year. Came back, he's rehabbed it and done those things, but obviously it's all it takes is a little bit. When I think he's had 7 total surgeries, and so for Nick Brahms, it's just been dealing with that knee issue once it flared back up again in camp.
Okay, Jimmy, let's switch over here talking some defense with Jason Caldwell.
Well, the change in defensive strategy really showed up in that Iron Bowl last year. I think a lot of people behind the scenes said basically that was Schmedding's scheme, and that it was very successful clearly against Alabama, to the point that after the SEC championship game, Georgia just kind of swiped that defensive package and used it for the national championship game, and it likewise was very effective. Do you look for Auburn to really expand on that more aggressive scheme? Because, again, if you've got the players and the athletes, it can be very effective, and that's the side of the ball that we all know Auburn feels really good about. And, during the spring and now through preseason camp, do you sense from your sources that the players are really confident and really developing as they continue to use this more aggressive scheme on defense?
Yeah, I think it's a defense that just physically, has some things that it can do and do really well. They can get after you and do a lot, but I'm kind of a little different. I think the Alabama defense was more about those guys having Thanksgiving break, and they were able to rest. They were worn out at the end of the year. That was a defense that was pretty good a lot of the season. They were tired, and without having to go to class during Thanksgiving, they were able to do some of those things. I don't think Houston's offense was better than Alabama's, and Houston moved the football a lot better than Alabama did in the bowl game. With the scheme it had. So I don't know that it was a whole lot different. Now, they did blitz more, but you also knew that you had to. And, Georgia played Alabama the next week in the SEC championship game. Didn't do a whole lot with them then when Alabama's wide receivers were healthy. But they did in the national championship game when they didn't have those guys. And that brings me back to that point about having playmakers on offense. That's why it's so important. But I think this Auburn defense has a chance to be really good because of the guys back. You got Derek Hall and Eku Leota, Colby Wooden, Marcus Harris, Owen Pepo, Nehemiah Pritchett, Jalen Simpson. That front group can compete with just about anybody. Can they find the depth, especially up front? That edge position, they play those guys, like Derek Hall and Eku Leota a lot at the same time. They'll play two of those guys a good bit. Can Dylan Brooks, can your Western Kentucky transfer, can those guys spell them enough to keep them fresh in the fourth quarter and late in the season? Or Jason Jones and Jeffrey Imba, are those guys ready to play an SEC schedule? Again, that's a question we won't know till later. They look the part, but now can they go out and do it for into week 10? We know Colby Wood and Marcus Harris. We know those guys can, but they need to have somebody that can give them a break to keep those guys fresh until late in the year, because I thought that showed up as much as anything last season.
What is it about Jimmy Brumball's style of coaching that's going to be different than Eason or Rodney Garner?
Yeah, I don't know that it'll be really different from Rodney Garner. I do think in terms of Nick Eason last year, I think the biggest thing is Jimmy Brumball has been a college football coach, and you understand the need to play younger guys. The NFL, it's 40-0 in the fourth quarter, and the starters are still in the game on both sides because they're chasing their stat totals to get their bonuses. That's not the way you play college football. It shouldn't be anyway. You've got to play young guys early in the season to get them prepared, to build some depth. And we saw it at the end of the year last year. They had all this big freshman defensive line group at Auburn a year ago, and Marquise Robinson was the only one of them that played a down, and he played 5 snaps. That can happen. You cannot do that in college football nowadays and expect to build something. And so you got these guys, Jeffrey Imba, I mentioned him, Anisi Sledge, some of these guys, they've got to get on the field early to kind of shake some of that rust off and to see what you have to build some depth for down the road, but also for next season.
Well, and I just think about, Jimmy Brumball, the way he played, he was a sideline to sideline. I think he had 297 tackles, came out of Keystone Heights, Florida. He's been a strength and conditioning coach. He's played a lot of different roles. And he's a guy, he's a high energy guy. But Auburn had 6 or 7 defensive linemen enter the portal last year, and still they've got a lot of talent there. And not many schools that can say that, Jason.
No, they went in and added some guys out of the portal. You look at Morris Joseph from Memphis, Marcus Bragg from Western Kentucky, a couple of those guys. Jason Jones was a guy that made that decision pretty early and was in for spring practice from Oregon. Then you had Jeffrey Imba from junior college, Sledge I mentioned as a high school player. You get Marquise Robinson back out of the portal, and from a number standpoint, you're in good shape. You still have Marquise Burks there and that defensive tackle, and Jeremiah Wright moved back to the offense, which I think is the right move for him because I think his future is on the offensive line. So from a number standpoint, physicality, from the physical, just the look of things, they got plenty of guys up front. But you got to go and find out if they're ready to handle the grind of playing in this league.
20 months into Brian Harsin being the coach at Auburn, does the strength and conditioning program look like it's made a lot of improvement? Because to me, it looked like Auburn was getting bullied around on the line of scrimmage before the change with Harsin, but that doesn't get fixed overnight. It takes about 15, 18 months. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I've seen the guy, Austin Troxell's the guy that stands out to me. And some of that too is, guys like that, like Austin Troxell and Nick Brahms, when you have surgery in off seasons, you don't get a chance to work out. You're rehabbing and you don't get to build. This is the first time Austin Troxell's had a chance to build really since he's in the 10th grade. He's had a surgery to deal with just about every year. And so, for a guy like him, it was really important. On the flip side, Brandon Council's a guy that had surgery, was on a scooter for much of the summer. Can he get back into that shape? Keandre Jones missed some of the spring and early camp. How will he look? I think physically, from a strength standpoint, I think they'll be fine. What's it look like in terms of the wind they'll have late in the game? And fortunately, it hasn't been as hot for these guys. It's supposed to be in the 80s right now, the advanced forecast, low 80s for the high for next Saturday. And that means kickoff at 6 o'clock, maybe upper 70s. We've gotten unseasonably cool weather here in the last few weeks here in August. And so I think when you look at it, that's going to be a big deal for these guys.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Well, we always talk about depth, and I couldn't help but laugh, Jason, when you were talking about an NFL game where teams are up 40-0, keeping their starters in there. That's because they only have 47 players on a roster, which is insane. Think about 17 NFL games and how brutal those are, and you only have 47 players. And even at the college level, we talk about how important depth is. And what I wanted to see if you might be able to inform the Auburn fan base, what maybe new players, recruits that have come into the program and portal additions and so forth have really kind of stood out from what you've been able to find out and are going to be able to, especially for the incoming freshmen, be able to maybe play early and get a chance to contribute.
Yeah, I think on offense, there's a couple of guys. Damari Alston's been really good. His vision, I think he brings a different dimension to that running back room and a different kind of player. So I think Damari Alston at running back, Camden Brown, true freshman wide receiver from St. Thomas Aquinas, physical. He's kind of an old school wide receiver a little bit. He's a dog. That's who he is. And he's not the fastest guy, which probably hurt him in terms of maybe even some offers and some rankings. But he can play football, and that's just what he does. So those two guys on offense for me, and then Keontae Scott, junior college transfer, cornerback on defense. He's going to play. He's going to play early. And Auburn feels like he's a guy that's an NFL guy. You look at him, he's 6'6'1", 190 pounds. I mean, he's a physical corner. He could play corner. He'll play nickel. But I think you're going to see him on the field pretty early as well. So those are three guys I think that are going to have an immediate impact for this team. Now, Damari may not be as much at running back when you're behind Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, but I do think we're going to see him some.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here looking right now at what is going on. I think about the Auburn offensive line, Jason. That's the one that we've got to fix more than anything.
That's it. That's where it starts. That's when you're talking about current, future, past. That's where everything lies. You think back to that 2017 team, and they went because they were able to run the football. They ran the football against Georgia. They ran the football against Alabama. That's the key for it. And they haven't recruited well enough on the offensive line in the last 4 or 5 years, and that's had an impact. And it forces Austin Troxell and some of these guys, they have to play maybe when they're still hurting some of those times through the past. It's the number one spot. Auburn, defensively, they're going to get guys. Auburn's defense is usually going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Can you be good enough on the offensive line to like I said, to run the football against the best teams you play? In the end, in this offensive scheme, just like it was for Gus Malzahn, everything goes back to, can you line up and run it when the other team knows you're going to?
Yeah, I mean that's critical, and that's what they got to do. Jason, look, great segment as always. I mean, I'm sitting here, listening to what you're saying, and I just, my hope is the offensive line is just somehow better than expected. We know about injuries and all like that, but look, let people know how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on next week. Always great, and I always learn a lot, and so does everybody else.
Yeah, you can check us out, autigers.com. Plenty of ways to get there. auburnundercover.com as well as Auburn247. And can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason.
Well, you put out great stuff every day. Have a great weekend. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Okay. Let's see here. We're going to be okay. Bottom line is when you take a look at what is going on, when you take a look at what is going on. When you take a look at what's going on there with Auburn, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, and I think about this with Auburn. They've got to find a way. They've got to find a way to improve with the offensive line. If that improves, Auburn has a chance to be pretty darn good. The defense is going to be strong. We know that. But the biggest problem for Auburn is the center. I mean, you go from a guy, Nick Brahms, who played in 40 games, started most of them, to a center that's got 11 snaps under his belt. That'll keep you up at night. That's why these coaches get paid a lot, and that's why they they're as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. But hey, man, let's talk with Dan Matthews right now, executive producer, Southern Sports Today, with Chuck Oliver. Great all over the South. You got to love the energy that they bring, and more than anything, he's a hardcore Astros fan, right in the heart of Braves country, big time LSU fan. And Dan, what are you hearing over there? Let's start with Athens right now. Stetson Bennett's coming back for his 6th year, defending national champion quarterback, and Georgia, 15 players drafted, 5 first-rounders off that defense. They got a game in 8 days against an Oregon team that's going to come in with Bo Nix at quarterback. So there's familiarity. He had 3 games and was 0 for 3 against Georgia as Auburn's quarterback. Had 1 close game, the other 2 not so much. But what is the mindset of Georgia right now, 192 hours away from kickoff?
Wow, I can't even do that much math. It's obviously very much put last year behind them, and I know that some people might say, well, that doesn't make any sense. No, Kirby Smart has made it pretty clear to the program that was last year's team. This is now 2022, and you got to prove that you can do it on your own, and that's something that I think that you're going to see them try to do. I know that after the first scrimmage, he talked about the defense. He didn't really like the lack of leadership. I mean, Kirby is his toughest grader, and that's why they found themselves in the situation they were last year, winning a national title. But you're replacing a lot off that defense, and I think that you're going to have a lot of really hungry players out there trying to prove that they belong, because the good news is you got a bunch of 4- and 5-star players. The bad news is you got a bunch of 4- and 5-star players who really haven't played much. So that's going to be something I think is going to be something to look out for. Offensively, I think you're going to be asking a little bit more this offense this year. I mean, this is a defense that gave up, how many points last year?
11. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So, you can't count on that every single year. So they weren't in a lot of close games last year, but when you don't have that same amount of defensive production coming back, then it's going to be something that, the offense is going to need to be able to prove that they can sustain on their own as well. And I think that that's something that Stetson Bennett and the crew need to be able to prove.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break and come back. We're going to get more into other teams in the SEC because, it's a legitimate question to ask. How often is a quarterback asked to go win the game versus manage it because you've got a great defense? And that's the narrative a lot of people have put on Stetson Bennett. I think he's capable of doing it. I think he's capable of winning the games. He's got talent around him, but we're going to talk about it after this quick break. More sidelines after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Dan Matthews again with us over in Atlanta. Dan, looking around the SEC, LSU, we know what Brian Kelly has done at Notre Dame. He's got a lot of talent, and it's starting to click on the recruiting trail. I'm not surprised. Are you?
No, not at all. I mean, he was somebody that had to recruit on a national level when he was at Notre Dame, and that's the way that his class looked at the beginning. But now, I mean, it's one of those things that, his coaching staff and his program are starting to be able to go into their own home states and start to pull players. And it's also, too, how it goes. I think a lot of people get caught up in who's committing at a certain time and then start to think, well, they're falling behind on recruiting. If you start getting guys about right now, that's when all right, we're in a good spot. And them, Florida, Georgia years ago when they were starting to get things going, it's not necessarily about who commits at a certain time. It's when you get them to sign. And let's just take Georgia, for example. They're notorious now for this is about when they start getting a lot of commitments. And then, they're going to start getting flips on signing day, and they're going to get guys to actually sign. I mean, there's a difference between schools that can get guys to commit. There's a difference between schools that can get guys to sign. LSU's one of those schools that can get guys to sign. And, you get Shelton Sampson Jr. to say yes to them. And once he decides to stay at home and go to LSU in Southern Louisiana, started to look around and say, you know what, this could be something pretty special here. Let's do this. Another point, too, I can't remember if it was brought up by Brian Polian or if it was brought up by Billy Napier over at Florida. You got to remember, these coaching staffs and these football staffs were being finalized for much of this time, too. So you didn't have the amount of on-field and support staff that these other schools that you're recruiting against right now already have in place. So that's something else to keep in mind as well, and that's something that Brian Kelly has now been able to put in position, and I think he can fully show what this program looks like. Obviously, kids like what they're seeing because they're saying yes to them.
Yeah, we had Jacques Doucet on from Baton Rouge Channel 9 Sports this past Monday, and he did a really good 35-minute segment with Brian Kelly. I thought it was outstanding, and it really opened up like a lot of people's eyes to, hey, Brian Kelly's a pretty cool guy. And as Jimmy references a lot, he's likely to win several national championships with his coaching abilities at LSU. And I think he's just getting more and more comfortable. And remember, Nick Saban came down there, and I mean, look, it's not like Nick Saban was from the Bronx. He's from Monongah, West Virginia. If you didn't know, you'd think you were in the South, which it is. But I just think LSU is one of those deals where the table is set. Just don't spill the food, man. You're going to win. 3 different coaches in this millennium, all 3 coaches, including your favorite coach, Dan, Lester Miles, have won a national championship. So, well, we got a bunch of guys from Lake Charles coming up to the Hunting Club this weekend, and we will be cooking boudin and apple burgers and some I think we will have a crawfish boil here next weekend. But I tell you one thing, I think LSU is going to be much better off in a couple of years than the program was when Coach O left. But anybody can come in there if they work hard. You're going to win 8 or 9 games just because you offer scholarships. Jimmy, jump in here.
Well,
I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
And before Jimmy does, that's always the thing that cracks me up the most about this. And, and people were trying to say to me, and then when I'd ask them, why is that the case? They couldn't give me a response. It's the biggest load of crap. And I'm not saying to you, but like about people, oh, he's going to be, so out of place there in Baton Rouge. Skip Bertman was out of place in Baton Rouge, and he came in and set the culture for baseball.
Yeah.
You said it yourself. Nick Saban came, from West Virginia and was in Ohio for much of his life, and then was up in Michigan at Michigan State.
Yeah.
And he came down and set the culture for football. Dale Brown was a guy from South Dakota and came to LSU and won. Like, people need to get out of this mindset that, like, LSU and Southern Louisiana is this, like, this separate world. It's not a separate world.
Yeah.
It's a state just like any other, and it's a place that if you go there and you embrace the people and you do the right things, and you set yourself up with a chance to win.
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time. I love it. We're going duck hunting down in Cameron Parish this year. And I live among a lot of Louisiana natives from Lafayette and Lake Charles and DeRidder in Memphis. They're in a hunting club. They're awesome people. They will accept you. One of the things about Cajuns is they rarely move more than 5 miles away from where they grew up. And if they move away, they want to make it feel as much like home as they can. So they're great neighbors if you like cooking out, but they will open their arms and accept you. And contrary to popular belief about LSU fans, I think they're great. I've been to LSU games. Frank, he's bringing Bengal 1 down for the Auburn LSU game. We're going to have so much fun there. And also, Dan, here's the real reason why. 3 weeks before college started, my dad was going to LSU as a preferred walk-on kicker, and a spot in the architecture school at Auburn opened, so he ended up going to Auburn. So I grew up listening to 870 WWL in New Orleans, Hap Glaudy, John Ferguson, LSU football, Jim Hawthorne. So I don't know. I've always had an affinity, and I think I'm that way with a lot of fan bases, but God, I do think LSU, and Jimmy, back me up on this one, is one of the premier jobs in the country.
Well, no doubt. But Dan, you will have offended some natives of North Dakota in saying that Dale Brown's from South Dakota, because they definitely want to claim him as their own Minot, North Dakota.
Shame.
Hey, Dan, as a matter of fact, my baseball coach at Louisiana Monroe my freshman year, Steve Maddox, his dad Carl hired Dale Brown, and he gave me the story about that, and he wasn't telling anybody, and Steve was just a kid, and said, "Dad, who's the coach going to be?" And he still wouldn't say by name, but he said, "Son, there just comes a time where you got to give a guy a chance." And when Dale Brown got the job, nobody really knew that much about him, but it wasn't long before he started making headway. But I wanted to comment about why LSU's really making headway on the recruiting trail, and that's because when you have all the resources they have and the intangibles that are there to be in a position to win championships, and then you bring in a coach like Brian Kelly, who has the proven track record he has demonstrated. Not only is he organized and brings a sense of professionalism that hasn't been there the last few years, he is a guy, as you mentioned, that knows how to bring in an experienced, effective coaching staff. And I think he's just establishing all the different foundational blocks that you have to have to really start a winning and developing a program in the manner that LSU should be able to do.
Yeah. I guess that, the whole thing is with him is that, he's got the track record, and there's a reason why Scott Woodward hired him. So I don't really understand why that's not enough for people. It's not like Scott Woodward has reached for any of the coaches that he's hired at LSU or at Texas A&M. I've said it for the longest time. The biggest problem with Brian Kelly was Notre Dame. And that's the funny thing, is that Notre Dame fans want to crack on him and say, oh, he was holding us back. Oh, it's going to be Marcus Freeman. He's going to be the one. I'm going to steal a line from my buddy Matt Moscona yesterday on his own show down in Baton Rouge. What are LSU or what are Notre Dame fans going to say when Marcus Freeman in his very first game at Ohio State gets his ass kicked by Ohio State? I mean, 'cause that's going to happen. And, so everybody who wants to think that this was a Brian Kelly problem and that Brian Kelly was the reason that Notre Dame wasn't winning, I think Brian Kelly was the reason that Notre Dame was winning. And, the fact that they were making the college football playoff, I'm sorry, when was the last time they were doing that? I mean, you want to try to tell me Charlie Weiss of making a handful of, meaningless BCS bowl games and then getting, just rushed by Ohio State and LSU in said games? I mean, I hadn't seen this level of success year in and year out at Notre Dame in some time. And, I mean, personally, I think that Irish fans, should have said thank you to Brian Kelly. And then they want to try to act like, how dare he leave the program the way he did. He left. He took a job. That happens. Like, it's funny how, like, people – you guys ever notice that in college sports that whenever you want to stick up for the players, their kids, whenever you want to talk about how great they are, they're men. And this was a situation right here. Oh, I can't believe he left those kids the way he did. They weren't making the college football playoff. They were going to go to the Fiesta Bowl or something like that regardless. And could he have done it better than he did? Okay, maybe. That's fine. But it's still a breakup. It happens. Get over it. Someone's gonna feel slighted. They felt slighted. But for Notre Dame fans to act like he did nothing for you, I think is incredibly disingenuous and it's pretty ungrateful.
Yeah, and
how many of those Notre Dame fans would have turned down 10 years, $100 million, plus a chance to have a legitimate chance to win the national championship? Because the job he did at Notre Dame again was just exemplary, because a lot of college football fans do not realize the entrance requirements at Notre Dame are different than a lot of these schools and virtually all the schools that they battled against to get into the college football playoff. I mean, he is one of the top coaches in the country. And in fact, Rob and I and Frank Duffy were talking the very day before LSU announced Brian Kelly as the coach. I said to those guys, the one guy that really concerns me if he got that LSU job would be Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
And at 24 hours later, there he is. And I'm going, these guys are going to be a problem going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said. I mean, he's shown that he's an outstanding developer of talent, and also, too, I mean, he's an outstanding coach. I mean, you don't win at Cincinnati the way that they did. You don't win at, Central Michigan the way that they did, or Notre Dame the way that they did, unless you can coach. And he's proven he can coach. I mean, I think now he needs to, that he's got, the good looking girl. He's got to prove that he can stay in that relationship. And, I think that's something that now he's going to need to try to prove. But based off what he's done elsewhere, I don't see how he couldn't. If you can win at Notre Dame, you can win anywhere.
Yeah, Lou Holtz was speaking Monday night. We went to the dinner there at Vestavia Hills Country Club, and Paul Feinbaum and Lou Holtz did a question and answer session up on the podium, part of the CoachSafely.org that Kevin Skarbinski and Jack Crow has started. Great organization. It was sold out, people standing on top of each other. Lou Holtz said, when I took the job at Notre Dame, they told me the entrance requirements are tough. We're not going to budge on that. Our facilities aren't great. We're not going to spend money on those. And they listed all these things, and we're going to pay you $95,000 a year. I took it. I'm Catholic. I dreamed of it, going to Notre Dame. But that's what it was, and that's the last time they won a national championship was 1988. And I love Notre Dame. I'm Episcopalian, now Catholic. Every Catholic in America has a Notre Dame pennant somewhere in their past. There's nothing like them, but he went as far as he could at Notre Dame. He's at LSU. There is no ceiling at LSU. They just got to get out of their own way. Dan, I want to switch gears now. And y'all being in Atlanta, you and Chuck have a great show, Southern Sports Today, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday Eastern, all about college football. And it really is. It's great stuff. What are you hearing from ACC people. I mean, there's Clemson, North Carolina with Mac Brown. You got Cristobal at Miami, and now, Mike Norvell in year 3 at Florida State. But the team that I saw in the ACC that has more guys on the Senior Bowl watch list of the top college players in the country this year is NC State with 10 guys on that list. I think Clemson has 7. And North Carolina State last year was denied the bowl game against UCLA. But, in Atlanta, and then you've got fans of every school. You got a lot of Wolfpack folks over there. But let's get some ACC thunder going.
I mean, you want to know like who I see?
Well, yeah. Who are y'all talking about? I mean, Clemson has dominated this conversation, and I think,
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably Clemson, it's wanting to see if they can get back to their college football playoff form. Miami, are they truly back? I think that's another question that people have, and then. On top of it all, can Florida State jump back? I mean, I think that there's a lot of unknowns in the ACC. I mean, we feel like the only known that we have is Clemson, but still there's people who want to say, oh, it's DJ Uiagalelei. He's holding them back. DJ Uiagalelei did not play bad in November and December last year, and Clemson did not play bad offensively in either of those months last year. So, for people to try to say that, again, it's kind of like we were talking about with Brian Kelly and Notre Dame earlier. It's the same deal with Clemson of, DJ Uiagalelei, the offensive line. The offensive line is going to be fine. As a matter of fact, Dabo Swinney thinks that's going to be probably one of their better groups. So if he's feeling that way, then I think that people should probably take his word for it because it's won a couple of national titles. I'm willing to listen to somebody that's won a couple of national titles when they tell me, how good a group is. So, it's what we do. I mean, we look for, for reasons why people are going to fail. I mean, look at what we're doing with Nick Saban. I mean, we're trying to get Nick Saban out the door, and he just signed a contract extension. Yeah. So, I mean, it's never good enough. And then when it's finally not good enough for us, we always look at it and say, oh, well, now why aren't they as good as they used to be? I mean, the collapse of this program and all these different types of things, and it's just, I don't know. It's kind of nauseating and exhausting at a certain point. So,
yeah, it is.
I mean, I think those schools you look at. I know a couple of people I've heard said look for UNC to bounce back this year. So that's going to be something to look for. I think Pat Narduzzi's building a pretty decent program at Pitt. And he's got a pretty good quarterback there in Keaton Slovis. So it'll be interesting to see, even without Jordan Addison, what they can do. I know that the Sam Hartman loss at Wake Forest was tough, but, it's also as well, Dave Clawson's built a pretty good program there in his own right. And then NC State, 10 returning starters on that defense. Dave Doran's a guy.
Dan, if you could hold that, we got one more 1 minute break. We want to ask you that. I want to hear that NC State stuff. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Dan, you were making great points about NC State and Dave Doran. Let's go.
Yeah, physical program, 10 starters returning on defense. When you got the ACC Player of the Year, too, and Devin Leary, I mean, it's just going to be a question of what does he have around him on offense. And, if he's able to put it together and that defense is able to be what they've been, then there's no reason to not look at NC State either.
Yeah. And that, last year, you think about it, they were on the verge of having their best regular season, I think, ever in program history. So great stuff as always. Dan, look, I know you've got a big day ahead of you. Did you go up to North Carolina?
Not recently.
Oh, okay. I thought you were up there with, I know they were up there doing the show in North Carolina, and I just thought I don't know if you had to travel all the time, but I know Chuck was doing the show. Wasn't he doing it last night up there?
Sure.
But
yep.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about, all the coverage, ACC, SEC. My gut feeling is the ACC schools probably got a memo from the commissioner. Well, then again, we're dealing with Jim Phillips. I don't know if he did it or not, but say, guys, ramp up your programs. We got to save this league. And he needs to start letting the league members know we're doing everything we can to get more money to you so they won't bolt for, seemingly greener pastures. But Dan, great stuff as always. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us. You always come well prepared. You are the AAA plus executive producer, Southern Sports Today with Chuck Oliver, and always love it. Let people know how they can follow you and look forward to having you on next week.
I appreciate it. Yeah. At Chuck Oliver Show, at Dean Matthews, ATO, 1T and Matthews. I'll talk to y'all then.
Okay, thanks so much. Jimmy, looking at that NC State program, I want your, quick take. We got a minute or so before Bo Carter joins us. And I'm thinking about, last year, Clemson in that first game, the 10-3 loss to Georgia. Georgia had that generationally incredible defense, but the other losses were to Pitt on the road, pretty close loss, double overtime loss at NC State. Do you think along the lines of what Dan's saying, NC State is a legitimate threat? I mean, I do to taking Clemson out this year. I wonder, hopefully Clemson for their sake is going to get back.
Yeah, I think a big question is in regard to Clemson. I mean, even Richmond Weaver in our conversations with him is still concerned about that offensive line. I don't know if they made very many changes, and it was pretty shaky last year. And what hasn't been mentioned is that Clemson could have easily lost 5 games that they won last year, because their defense really came through at the end of games in the red zone. I mean, they got everything they could possibly get out of that team to be able to win 10 games. So, we'll see how that offensive line is coming along. I've heard DJU has lost about 20 to 25 pounds, so I'm guessing he'll have some mobility also, which certainly should be able to help him. And, we'll just see how they come along. They should have a good opportunity coming out of the gate to show what they have against Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And get off to a good start. But there are 10 returning starting quarterbacks in the ACC this year, which is really unusual. And I think we're going to see a lot of offensive production throughout the league.
Yeah. Bo Carter joins us out in Dallas, formerly with, he used to be SID at Mississippi State, Big 12 office for a long time, College Football Foundation, and the Baseball Writers of America. Golly, I guess he doesn't do anything. he's busier than a one-legged man in a kick fight. They used to say that in the Quad Cities of Sheffield, Tuscumbia, Florence, and Muscle Shoals, home of the Swampers. By the way, have you ever been to that studio where the Swampers that recorded for, Skinner, Rod Stewart? Have you ever been to that place?
Yes. It's 2 blocks from Sheffield High School. And funny, our junior year, Sonny and Cher were recording there all day when Sonny was still alive. And they bought breakfast for like half the people in our junior and senior class. So they were they must have had a hit on their hands, I guess.
Bo, were you there in the studio when they recorded Sweet Home Alabama?
No. Actually, we know one of the David Hood, one of the Swampers, is a fellow Sheffield High grad. He's in his 70s now, but he's one. I think 2 have passed away, and he's one of the last ones. Really nice guy, and his wife and my younger sister are best friends, so we get to see the King Swamper every once in a while.
God, that's cool. Because I just think about it. Got a text for you, Bo Carter, from one of our listeners, Artemis Pyle. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. What's going on there?
Artemis Pyle is saying, with all the conference expansion talk, I'm reading this. Okay. With all the conference expansion talk, you're located right there. You're close to what's going on with the Big 12. Why are we not hearing about the Big 12 making a move? We've heard about Arizona State grabbing hold of that big TV market. And then the second part of that question is, do you see a potential merger between the Big 12 and what's left of the Pac-12 after Southern Cal and UCLA leave, and then potentially Oregon and Washington, the Bay Area schools, Cal and Stanford? We don't know, but you do. Thank you, Artemis Pyle.
Great question. And Brett Yormark just took over as Big 12 commissioner for Bob Bowlesby, and they've both been sort of working on internal negotiations or whatever. The big and Rob, this television is driving the bus on this thing again.
Yeah.
So there even was some talk about trying to get Nebraska back in the Big 12. They've had they open with Notre Dame. With Northwestern tomorrow in Dublin, Ireland. But
top of the morning,
faith in Bogota. Yeah.
Holy
but no,
cow.
they've sort of taken a little bit of a backseat. The University of California, Berkeley, or the University of California system is over UC Berkeley and UCLA, and they've been kind of going around. Governor Gavin Newsom has said he's not going down without a fight, so it's really going to be a kind of a dogfight on that.
Stop the presses. I don't mean to interrupt you, I promise you, but that's new news. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Say that again.
Wow. Hey,
Wow.
let me jump in on this, guys. The University of California chancellor, who's over all the University of California branches, Michael Sherman. Let me tell you something. Gavin Newsom doesn't want any part of him, because when he was a president at Ohio State, he stood down Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer blinked. And that was after, that Zach Taylor situation, and, that the board of trustees, they thought they were going to meet that day, and Urban Meyer was just going to get a slap on the wrist. And some members of the board of trustees didn't want Meyer suspended at all when the original ruling was 4 games. And then Michael Sherman came in and said, hey, he actually wanted Urban Meyer fired. Yeah. But 4 games he was biting his lip on that. And when the board of trustees, some of those guys wanted no games regarding the suspension, Michael Sherman just stepped in and took over. And so I would just tell Gavin Newsom, just watch how you tread. This is not Janet Napolitano that's still the head of the University of California.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Bo, but again, I do not. I pride myself on not interrupting, but that's a big. You've thrown a couple of big things out here. So again, I'm not going to get in the way of the Swampers. Let's go. Carry on, my wayward son.
No, but Jimmy, great points on that too. You've got a lot of big egos, and again, Pac-12 doesn't want to give away the Phoenix and Tucson television markets, which are very boy. Phoenix is growing by the day, as you guys know, and with Cal, you've got San Francisco, Oakland, that whole area out there. So again, it's a kind of thing. Brett Yormark, the new Big 12 guy, is supposedly like one of the top sports experts on digital broadcasting too. So I think he's trying to kind of in the smoke-filled rooms, as Rob and I say all the time, working on some deals, for web streaming, some other deals where they can pick up a little extra money. So unfortunately, it's a lot about TV and dollars.
Well, I can tell you, out in California, I'm not sure if it's a smoke-filled room of cigar smoke or weed. I mean, I don't know what's going to get done in that meeting, except a lot of people eating Crystal burgers at 3 a.m. But I digress. All right, Bo Carter, got to ask you this. I read a quote from someone. They were talking with Chuck Ninus. He was quoted as saying, he was a former commissioner of the Big 12.
Yes.
Okay. And they asked, what are they going to miss? He said Texas will not be missed in the meeting rooms when they leave and go to the SEC. Was it that contentious once the Longhorn Network came along for other schools? Like, hey, this is all about Texas. They've always got to be, you remember that character on Saturday Night Live? What was her name? Penelope or whatever. She would always, they'd say, I'm going to the beach next week. She goes, oh, I went to the Riviera last week. And I went to Monte Carlo. She goes, well, we're going to the beach for 2 weeks. I went for 3 weeks. They always had to big click you, you know what I'm saying? But just curious what it was really like. I mean, because, hey, I'm excited Texas is coming in the league. I'm excited Oklahoma's coming in the league. Dadgummit, I'm going to find something positive to say about everything because negativity is a waste of time. I mean, it's like hitting the snooze button, man. You got to get up. Just get up.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Rob, you hit the nail on the head. The Texas-Oklahoma games, they went back and did a survey for the games involving those two teams, not just the Texas-OU game, have been the highest rated television games on the Big 12 for at least 5 years, maybe longer or whatever. So they both have great followings, big audiences. And and speaking of the meetings, I was in on a few of them. I kind of excused myself once or twice, but we were mostly with the PR and marketing people. But the weird deal, Chuck Nice was also commissioner of the Big 8 conference before before Carl James took over and the Big 8 and the Big 12 merged in 94. But they've as you remember, it was Oklahoma, Nebraska, and the Little Six on the Big 8 most of the time, and then Texas and Texas A&M really called most of the shots from the old Southwest Conference, just from power and monetary standpoints or whatever. So once you mixed in Nebraska and Texas and Oklahoma and even Colorado, which big TV market in Denver, you always had a little bit of like, well, what's in it for me? I mean, and what wasn't hatred toward schools, but just like, hey, we had this deal in the Big 8. One of the biggest things too, Robert and Jimmy, was the admission standards. Texas has always really had, well, the last 30 or 40 years, they've had kids who are valedictorians at 5,000 enrollment high schools who couldn't get into Texas because of really hard admission requirements. And then Nebraska and Kansas State and some of the former Big 8, current Big 12 members had a little bit lower admission. If you, I want to think, until 96, when the Big 12 actually took, if you had a C average and you were in, and made like a 15 or 20 on the ACT or 1,000 on the SAT, you were automatically admitted to Kansas State or Kansas or possibly Nebraska. So that, pretty much open admission. So boy, they had the choice of any football players they wanted, really, or other student athletes.
Well, I mean, what's the old saying? The A students and the B students, most of the time work for the C students. I mean,
that's right.
And why are Irish setters the most often hit dog? They're interbred. They're too intelligent, and they that's what happens. But Jimmy, jump back in here. Your kind words about I can't imagine having to talk to anybody like Gavin Newsom without being drunk. It wouldn't be tolerable. I don't think it would be possible. Jimmy and I couldn't do it, and I don't think you could either. No. I mean, what an obnoxious creep to have to talk to about trying to. I mean, if he's talking to UCLA in Southern Cal, they're probably running. It's like Mildred. Oh, I'm going to put on my swimsuit. And Jimmy, jump in here and save the world.
Well, I can assure you that Michael Sherman knows how to talk to them. And to kind of continue on that Board of Trustees meeting where, Urban Meyer was actually threatening to say that if he was suspended any games at all, that he was going to resign. And basically, Michael Sherman's attitude was, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But Urban agreed to it. But at that point, that very day, Urban Meyer knew that was going to be his last year at Ohio State because he was not going to be able to run roughshod over the administration. And but Bo, I want to ask you, were you with the Big 12 in 2011?
No, I'd left by the time, but still had a lot of friends down there. We heard all the rumors all the
Right.
time.
Right. Well, I went now, since it's been 11 years, the statute of limitations. I mean, I think people can talk about it now, but I know that on that June Sunday morning in 2011, one AD who remains anonymous, I don't know who it was, but was quoted as saying, "When I woke up that morning, I was convinced that half of our league would be part of the Pac-12. And what is your understanding happened during the day to change everything and the Big 12 deciding to stay intact?"
Great question, Jimmy. The Big 12 was going through some administrative changes. Kevin Weiberg, who was the commissioner from 98 to the 2010 time, was very much in favor of, just like the SEC and most conferences, except the ACC does this too, but they do a different formula for splitting up the revenue. So, in the SEC, Vanderbilt gets the same take as Alabama, et cetera. And Kevin had pushed really hard for an equal split without they had some incentives. If you were on television 3 or 4 times at home, you got extra money and some other basketball incentives, et cetera, for Kansas and some of the others. But at that time, Kevin Weiberg was segueing over to Dan Beebe, who was very much, unfortunately for him, I guess, very much in favor of the Longhorn Network. And he had thought, long story short, sorry to get too long-winded here, he was under the impression that the Longhorn Network would do some other Big 12 games besides just the ones involving Texas. In fact, they were scheduled to do a Texas Tech, Texas State game, and Texas State refused to play their camp refused to play it on their campus is 20 miles from Texas. So they knew all the commercials and public service announcements would be about the Longhorns. So they backed out. But no, you're exactly right. Talking about the Pac-12 deal. Texas.
Bo, if you could hold those thoughts, we're going to have to take a quick break. And I don't want you to get started on that, but pick up that after this. We're going to take a commercial because I want to hear about it more here on Sidelines with Bo Carter.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
As Professor Turgeson said in that movie with Rodney Dangerfield, Back to School, say it. I'm going to say it. Go, Bo, go. I had to say it.
Hey, sorry to give a long-winded answer, Rob and Jimmy, but
no, it's
bottom line,
very important.
No, and bottom line, that brought up, Jimmy, there's a great point in 2001. That brought up resurrected some old thoughts. Texas in 94 really talked extensively with the Pac-12. One of their associate ADs confided, who shall remain nameless, said, we'd be a lot better off in the Pac-12. We've got better television exposure. We recruit that, Ricky Williams came from San Diego, their Heisman Trophy running back, et cetera. And they were looking for that California recruiting base and sort of looking at the national picture there or whatever. But that, didn't really hasten the Longhorn Network, but they and I think the Pac-12 had talked to A&M too. There was sort of a SEC versus Pac-12 discussion there.
Well, you get into that Southern California market, and then you think about the Pac-12 fumbling the ball and not being able to work out a deal with DirecTV. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Larry Scott, who survived 12 years there. 12 years. Stupid is as stupid does. but 12 years of Larry Scott. You're looking around the country right now. We were talking with Dan Matthews right before you came on, executive producer of the Chuck Oliver Show. It's on in 56 markets in 8 southern states. All college football, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday. Love it. Chuck, is the king of college football in the South, is what they call it. They talk ACC, SEC, Big, everybody, because it's Atlanta's kind of, especially SEC, ACC. Do you think there was pressure in the Big 12 for everybody to ramp up all their programs, and the conference office also reaching out to member schools and saying, hey, we want you to stay? Because that's something people neglect. They forget about it, but that is employee or member retention. It's critical to the future. Sometimes just a reminder, hey, we appreciate you being in this conference. As corny as that may sound, may keep them.
Well, and the tough part under the Big 12 contract that was signed, they renewed the TV contract about 3 times by then. They had to have a minimum of 10 teams in the conference. So when you had Nebraska, TC or Nebraska, the other 3 teams leaving, Colorado, A&M, and Missouri, they had to quickly go find West Virginia and TCU to keep that TV because the networks probably wouldn't have avoided it, but they just didn't want to take a chance. And that was when Chuck Ninus took over as interim commissioner of the Big 12, and he honestly saved the conference. Yeah.
Why does it West Virginia strike you as, pig pen, the kid that doesn't bathe or the smell? I mean, why does everybody make sport of them? I mean, the state flower in West Virginia is a satellite dish and stuff like that. I mean, I've been up there a lot. I think it is an absolutely gorgeous state. Morgantown has a big endowment. It's got a medical school, law school. It's an hour south of Pittsburgh. And also think about, my dad said one time they were trying to build a building in West Virginia. He said, boy, we spent the entire day driving around the state, couldn't find any flat ground. It's tough. I mean, but why, they're in the Big 12, ACC, Big 10 seems like it makes more sense, but they've got a passionate fan base. And when you go there, it's an incredible atmosphere. It's crazy, but you know what? How many of us, we're all going to be watching the backyard brawl, West Virginia and Pitt, because it's going to be on the color TV here in very soon.
That's right.
I wish people would just get off of West Virginia, because they're the 14th winningest football program in the history of college football. Come on, man, give them some credit.
Bobby Bowden, Don Nealon, people that have really done well. Yeah. And then now with the expanded Big 12 or new Big 12, Cincinnati's in there and sort of a natural rival or travel partner in basketball. One thing that people are asking.
Are you saying they're going to be carpooling to Big 12 games?
Yes, they'll be right. The tough one's going to be getting from Provo, Utah to Morgantown, West Virginia for baseball and volleyball matches. It's they'll find a way. They have major airports in West Virginia. That's
sure. It's hard enough getting from Lubbock to Morgantown.
That's right.
Wait a minute, Bo. Think about that. The mountain people from Provo and the mountain people in Morgantown, it's going to be the college version of the Hatfields and McCoys.
It really will. Well, they'll have some moonshine and several other things out there. But
the BYU fans will ride their bikes.
Exactly. And
it'll be big. But I mean, I just think they've got a lot of fans. That West Virginia's got a rabid fan base. People, man, they just need to get credit. I mean, it's so easy, but they do bring something. I mean, it's not a big state, but it's right in the middle of a lot of people within 250 miles.
They really are. They traveled so well, but they're a prime bowl team. Anytime they can win 6 or 7 games. The Gator Bowl, I think, had them maybe 8 times, or they went to the Pinstripe Bowl when nobody else wanted to go, and their fans traveled up there on a snowy day or whatever. So they are very Rob Youth, very, very faithful. I mean, I hate to say it, they remind me a lot of Auburn fans. They've been through, they've long suffering. Have some really great times and some really tough times, but they've fought their way through it and remain loyal. And they're good givers. I mean, there's a lot of coal money up there and several resorts. Remember Briarcrest, the really big golf resort up there or whatever. So Greenbrier. And plus they're not that far from DC, so they've got a lot of powerful people in government positions and major industries.
Yeah, well, I've been up there snow skiing, Snowshoe, West Virginia. It's over 5,000 feet. They got a couple of black diamonds up there. It is, man, it's called the Allegheny Snow Trough. Comes off of Lake Erie. About 200 plus inches of snow a year up there. So I mean, look, man, they got the New River and the Golly River. The New River and the Golly River have like between them 6 Class 5 rapids. Now, the only other place I know east of the Rockies or east of the Mississippi that has Class 5 rapids is the Chattahoochee River in Columbus, Georgia. They've got whitewater rafting there now. You wouldn't believe how beautiful downtown Columbus is. But I mean, Jimmy, great stuff. Bo, this is just so revealing, but about how Texas State didn't want to play the game. But Texas, you know what gets me? They got a $14 billion endowment. Does anyone in the country, there's over $700 billion collectively nationwide with colleges and universities sitting in endowments. Yet the cost of college tuition keeps rising. What is this money for? Is this money you literally keep a giant mattress? That's what it reminds me of. I think of Mildred is laying in there on the mattress going, pow, there's billions of dollars under my body. But I'm just looking now at this college football season. It stopped. The best thing about playing football is it stops all the expansion talk, or maybe it fuels it more. So I want to get your thoughts about that TV deal with the Big 12, the Big 10. ESPN backed out, and you think, and we talked about it some last week, but ESPN's got some money to spend. Is the Big 12 and from your sources and all jumping in there and saying, "Hey, man, we want to get involved because you just picked up Cincinnati, Houston, Orlando." BYU's got over 15 million Mormons worldwide. They get their own channel, the BYU channel. It's all the G-rated TV shows and Father Knows Best and stuff like that. I mean, it's I think people are sleeping on what the Big 12 just did and is about to do.
Yeah, you're right. ESPN does have the inventory now, and interestingly, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are in the last years of their TV contracts, so they're in major negotiations right now. So, and it was interesting too, Rob and Jimmy, how the NBC kind of jumped in, even though they've got Notre Dame. And we talked about this earlier in the show. Notre Dame was making roughly $15 million a year off the current NBC contract. They're supposedly kicking that up over the next 5 years to 60 to 75 million. So they're finally going to join the Jones family there among the highest paid TV people. But NBC had a really sweetheart deal with Notre Dame for TV for the amount of revenue it was generating in advertising.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jimmy.
Well, just like with CBS, I mean, this last 6 or 7 years, they've been getting the SEC just about for free. And I mean, and that's why I'm really surprised, even though once Texas and Oklahoma officially join the SEC, that contract will be renegotiated. But I'm really surprised that before they knew that Texas and Oklahoma, less than a year later would be asking about joining the SEC, that after signing a 15-year deal, which, at the time sounded great, but then again, for the last half, the deal wasn't good at all. I was very surprised to see that the SEC signed a 10-year deal. I thought it would be along the lines of what the Big Ten has been doing and going with 6 to 8 year deals so that you're in a much better position to have leverage on the next TV contract. And I'm still just stunned at why the SEC went as long as 10, because now the Big Ten, as in this just completed contract, is going to be able to renegotiate their contract twice before the SEC is able to renegotiate it once after, this next renegotiation when Texas and Oklahoma get in.
And go ahead, Rob.
No, I was going to say, Bo, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Jimmy, tremendous points there too. And the other thing, the ACC also, not to add another stick to the fire there, has a 14-year deal that runs through 2036.
Yeah.
I've read and keep hearing that they're doing everything they can to keep Florida State and Clemson from joining the SEC. You could have two 20 to 22 team super conferences if the Big Ten and the SEC continue to expand, which would be again TV and monetary dream world there.
Well,
yeah, well, and what you're talking about there too, Bo, is that you could very well see Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina because of their brand leverage. I mean, all of those, well, not Clemson, but their football success in the last 10 years has made them obviously a big target. And this is a football-based movement with all these conference expansions. So, man, the ACC is they're really in a difficult situation now because they're locked into that TV contract until 2036. And, man, if those schools pull out, I know that exit fee is $60 million, but don't suggest for a second that ESPN and the other sources would be willing to negotiate or help with that buyout with each one of those schools to allow them, let's say those ACC schools, to move to the SEC, because it would be a natural a geographic extension, which would not be logistically inconvenient at all. So, man, if I'm the ACC and I'm the Pac-12 right now, I'm really nervous.
You're right. And one other thing too, that was a great point on the buyout, Jimmy. They tell me that I don't think the SEC fans or the SEC administration's very fond of the Longhorn Network. They would blend it in. They'll go ahead and cancel it probably. And Texas getting $30 million a year guaranteed from ESPN. They said that they would take the last 3 years of the Longhorn Network contract and use that to pay the Texas exit fee from the Big 12. So that would be a big, economic boom for Texas as well.
Well, what they ought to call that contract the ACC has till 2036, it's not a contract. It's more like a sentence.
Yeah.
And they're serving time until 2036 with no parole. But the fact, I still don't, and again, I'm not a lawyer. None of us are. But contracts are renegotiated constantly. Nick Saban says he'll be the highest paid coach. So if a coach gets a new contract, $1 more than what he's making, they got to go renegotiate it again. No, he's worth it. Kirby Smart, what he's doing at Georgia, these guys are worth it. So, look, this is great stuff. Bo Carter, look, thank you so much. Love you taking time out of your Friday morning. We'll do it again next week. Again, Dave Cody is out there listening in Bellingham, Washington right now. He said he was on the golf course yesterday listening to Sidelines, and he made the connection between the two of us. And Jack and John Turner, you're a lot of fun to have on here, man. You know a lot. And as we get into football, we'll talk about the Football Foundation, the baseball writers, but let people know how they can follow you in the future.
Well, just at Bo Carter 52 on Twitter, or the sports page, dfw.com, or the Texas Sports Daily. Glad that we do a weekly notes column, and might even have some Jimmy and Rob notes in there one of these weeks. You never know.
Statute of limitations are only 5 years.
That's right.
Hey, we'll do it.
Scary thought.
Have a great weekend.
Right.
Have a great weekend. And any breaking news, text me, okay?
Okay, good to see you guys. Thank you so much.
Same here.
All right, Bo. Thanks, man.
Go head on back down to Texas now and head out there to College Station, not too far from Bryan, proud of White Oak, Texas. A 6'1", 187-pound sophomore wide receiver, Olin Buchanan. Listen, if you turn on SEC Network and you see Jimbo Fisher with the Texas A&M logo in the background, and you listen, the best questions are asked by this guy right here, Olin Buchanan. I mean, Olin, Audrey and I are watching TV over the Cherry Farm in the Big Lodge the other night, and there you are going, I mean, it's like the Watergate investigation. When did you announce the starting quarterback, and when did you know it, and what was the situation? I'm telling you, I love having you on here, and nobody covers the Aggies like you do. I will say this collectively, you've forgotten more probably than the rest of them know, but welcome to Sidelines.
Well, I'm getting kind of old, so I'm forgetting a lot. In fact, I was really disappointed with myself last week, or I guess it was Wednesday, with Jimbo, because I could not imagine why he would call a press conference and not name his starting quarterback. So when I asked him who the starting quarterback was, and he said, or if he knew it was, he said no. I should have been prepared for that, but I was surprised. I was kind of, well, do you know? And you're just not telling us, but I should have been ready for that. Normally I am. So I was kind of disappointed in myself. But, Jimbo and I have a good rapport. He doesn't mind me asking him questions. He teases me about how many questions I ask him. It's the whole tug of war, I guess, between coach and media. But fortunately, it's a very respectful relationship we have.
Yeah, and Jimbo is very popular everywhere he's been. I mean, at Auburn, 93 to 98, those 6 years. I had a friend of mine that used to host him when he would come down to South Florida in recruiting. We're going to talk about the Aggies, Jimbo, and Olin Buchanan after this quick commercial break in the final segment here on a Friday. Sidelines. Jimmy Hodge and I will be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
And talking about the Aggies and Jimbo Fisher again, he's been successful everywhere he's ever been. And here it is in year 5. Things are really starting to fall in line. You got a great recruiting class coming in. Everybody that knows football knows you don't want to be counting on true freshmen to come in, but a lot of them came in January, got a spring practice under their belt. And then those summer conditioning, it just starts to acclimate them to what college life is like. Now, school is underway. We saw there your son is a freshman at LSU. So this
I failed as a parent.
Audrey sees everything that you do, and I do too, out there on the social media like that. But that was a classic. That's gonna be a lot of fun. I don't know how many kids you have and where all schools they are, but you got one at LSU and you're at A&M. People that are not from Louisiana and Texas that aren't familiar with it don't realize that's a great rivalry. I mean, because LSU considers on out to Houston an extension of the state of Louisiana, and that's right where A&M likes to recruit too. So there are a lot of really intense recruiting battles between those two schools.
Well, LSU and A&M used to, before they were in the same conference, it was an annual game. And for years and years and years, it was always played in Baton Rouge back when A&M was just a 6,000 student, all-male campus, and A&M needed the money. So they would play the game in LSU in Baton Rouge every year. And then A&M finally let women in and things started changing. And it was and this is fact, this isn't the Aggie perspective, but it was an annual game, and then A&M beat them like 5 years in a row in the late 80s and early 90s, and LSU ended the series. They didn't want to play anymore. They got tired of getting spanked, and they still owe A&M money for that. But now that they're in the same conference, now they have to play, and it's a game that I know LSU enjoys and I know A&M enjoys.
Well, I
know this: if my son gives me any crap, I'll just tell him I won't pay for the next semester, and you can pay it yourself, punk.
There you go. And look, I remember Harvey Williams out of Hempstead, Texas.
Oh, the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah, and look, yeah, I mean, and that again, you got to understand if you hadn't been out there, folks, you get into Houston and that area, there's a big Louisiana. They consider that to be part of their state.
Well, they consider wrong.
Yeah, exactly. No, they do. See, there you go. But you said something. I kind of just stopped for a second in my tracks. Texas A&M needed the money. Man, that was a long time ago. Was that when dinosaurs were on Earth?
Well, again, that's when they only had 6,000 students and they were all guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
all
and
the military.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, again, that is just it's great that's what we love about college football. There's tons of players out there, and A&M getting ready, man. You got 192 hours away from the start of college football season, and the fans are coming back. I'm not buying that narrative. Fans found other things to do during the virus. Even I think what it did, it's like you being the starter, you got hurt, your backup's out there doing well. You want to get your job back, so you're going to go to rehab. The fans want to get back. There's 90,000, 100,000 in these stadiums, 40 or 50,000 there tailgating, experiencing. If I'm an athletic director, you know what I do? I take off these ridiculous restrictions that signs everywhere. You can't park here. You can't walk on this grass. You can't do this, and say, you know what? Let's have fun. Everybody be respectful. Follow the golden rule. Let's try that. Hey, that's part of, Buddy Owen. We got to get you on Saturday on the round table with Buddy Martin, Kevin Skarbinski, and Frank Duffy, and Jimmy and me, and all. We just talk about college football, how much we love it. But I think Simpletown is a place that we're putting together. Buddy said the paper will be a penny a day or $1 for the year. We're only going to have 5 channels. 3 of them are going to be sports. One's going to be news, and the other one is going to be just old black and white, I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, the Beverly Hillbillies, and stuff like that. You want to live in Simpletown with us?
It sounds pretty good. Some people say I do already.
Well,
let me tell you this. You were talking about the fans coming back. A&M announced yesterday that they had sold their entire allotment of tickets for students, and A&M sets aside 37,000 seats just for students. Now, think about that. How many other places do the students attend games in that volume?
There's nothing like it. And that's what we are talking about on this show. I put out on Twitter yesterday, this narrative, we're not going to have college football, the gloom and doom people. Hey, man, put your lips over your heads collectively and swallow. Do us all a favor. Get out of our way. The fans are coming back. There are more people going to college football games now than have ever been. We think the glory days were the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Hey, man, every stadium's bigger. There's more interest. There's more people. This is what it's all about, folks. We are finding excuses to win. Olin, no school in America sells 37,000 student tickets. That is thumbs up to the Aggies. You got to stand at the game. The guys got to kiss their dates, they got to kiss her on the cheek. I mean, they got that collie dog, Reveille. As the guy said, he said, that's about as good a fit as they ever been in the Southeastern Conference. They got that dog out there, that collie dog, and the cadets and that band. He goes, whoo. He goes, I ain't seen nothing like it. But Jimmy, jump into this Friday round table with Olin Buchanan. It's a small round table, but we got Olin. We got the question man.
Well, Olin, as the regular season opener approaches, it appears that Jimbo has remained equally coy about announcing a starting quarterback. Do you get the impression he's going to wait right up till kickoff? And does it really matter at this point, because they've got 3 weeks to really make a hardcore decision when Miami comes into town?
Well, I think he already knows who his starting quarterback is. I don't know why he's playing it coy, but okay. If he wants to, send the guy out there to call the play and then bring him out and let the other guy run it, that's his prerogative. He can do whatever he wants to do. He's the coach. But his MO had been previously that he that he would name a starter about 10 days out. And he, for whatever reason, hasn't done that this year. But I'm kind of guessing at the very latest that we'll hear is Monday. Now, they do have a press conference a little bit later today, and they're going to be announcing some upgrades that are planned for Kyle Field, which I can't imagine what else they want to do. I guess it's kind of like when you've had, a certain augmentation and you decide, I want to go even bigger. I guess that's what you're doing. But Jimbo's going to be there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he decided that he was going to name his starting quarterback then too. But I think no later than Monday, so everybody will know, and everybody knows who's going to be getting all the reps with the first teamers.
Man, I tell you what, I like talking about stadium augmentation.
Well, hey, let's total up the numbers, Olin. The original expansion after the Johnny Football Heisman Trophy season, and in a lot of ways, you can, I think, argue that this is the house that Johnny Football built, because after that 2012 season, that's when the $450 million renovation actually started, didn't it? And there's been another one since. So how much total money has been used for that original renovation that started after the 2012 season? And have you heard any speculation on how much money will be spent on this next renovation or additions or whatever you want to call it?
I think they're probably almost charging as much as I got to pay an out-of-state tuition. But as far as the amount they're going to spend on this particular project, I think that's going to be announced at this press conference later today. I think they're working on like $100 million deal to expand the football, I guess, operations center where the kids are going to start. They'll be eating there and they'll be working out there and studying there, and they're in the process right now of tearing down their indoor facility and their indoor track facility so they can build this, which will also have a new and improved indoor facility. So I would say the original Kyle Field expansion was $450 million, and then they had to throw in another $300,000 because they need to bring in better turf. So that's how much grass costs, I guess. And with what they keep putting into it, I mean, I assume that they're going to be getting around 600 million before it's all said and done.
Well, look, I was in
Bucky's. About as much as we're going to give to all the kids that don't want to have to pay back their student loans.
Yeah, and I was in Bucky's a few weeks ago, and
thank you.
I was checking out in the cash register. That guy's an A&M fan. It was like dun 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 dun. That fight song just plays on the cash register when you go to Bucky's. But listen, man, Jimmy's right. They call it the house that Johnny Manziel built. But this is what we're seeing at A&M, and you're going to see it around the country, because when people hear about this, getting out 37,000 student tickets sold at Texas A&M, that's going to inspire other people in the SEC. That's a good thing. Maybe because I don't know, there's no other school in the country that does it. Arizona State may have more students, but I bet you those folks out there at Arizona State wearing jorts and tank tops to the games, they ain't going to be there in those kind of numbers. Plus, it's 125 degrees in the shade out there. But A&M, looking at this season, Olin, you start off, you got Sam Houston, then you got Miami. Everybody's going to be focusing on Miami. I think that's a game where A&M lays the wood to the Hurricanes. You do that, I think a fire could be started. Last year, you talked, they should have been 10-2. Again, knowing what you know about this team, the takeaways from watching them stretch and all, whatever you've got, you know what's going on. Are you feeling really confident about A&M's chances in every game?
Well, I think so. I think if you looked at just talent, and we also know the most talented team doesn't always win. Okay.
Correct.
But I think if you looked at, who has talent and, if you look at recruiting the last 4 years and all those things, I think if you were really objective about it, I try to be objective, even though I'm wearing a maroon shirt. I guess it's a black one today. I think with every regular season game, except for save Alabama, A&M probably has more talent. That said, I don't care how talented you are. You're in the SEC. And by the way, that's the stadium that the SEC built. Because if it wasn't for all that SEC money, I don't think we'd have that stadium the way it is. But anyway, no matter how much talent is, I think we've learned in the SEC, you go ahead and assume that there's a loss that you didn't expect. That's fair, right? So I don't know who it is, who it's against, but there's a loss you should expect that's going to be in there. I mean, hell, Alabama lost to A&M last year. No one expected that. And Alabama dang near lost to Florida and Auburn and Arkansas and LSU too. So, we know how hard it is in the SEC. But I think that coming into this year, especially if A&M stays reasonably healthy, that anything less than 10 wins, at least in my opinion, should be considered a disappointment, especially now that you're 5 years into the Jimbo Fisher regime.
Yeah, and when you have a high expectations, it's easier to get to those expectations or surpass them versus you're just glad that you're competitive. That's what the fan bases that demand and go crazy after a loss are the ones that long-term are going to be successful because they're given the money, they're demanding accountability. That is everything in college football. But again, basketball, same thing. It's very difficult. There's only 5 schools in the country, all-time top 25 wins in college football and college basketball. Syracuse is in that list, but they're slipping because their football program they're not winning enough to keep up, but basketball-wise, they're in there. Of course, Texas is one of those schools. North Carolina is one of those schools. But I just look at, and everybody looks at A&M is as Coach Bryant used to look at Florida. At some point, they're going to catch on, and it's going to be hard to stop them. From 1989 to 2009, Florida was the winningest program in all of college football. And look what's happened since then. After Urban Meyer left, it's just been a completely different story. They've been to Atlanta a few times, but is this year Atlanta? Do you hear that said a lot around College Station? Hey, Atlanta, the college football playoff. You get to Atlanta and take care of business there, you're going to the playoff.
Well, I think the feeling is, if you can get to Atlanta, you're going to the playoff. There's only been one loss SEC team that hasn't gotten into the playoff or something like that, and that was A&M in 2020 when they got hosed. Because quite frankly, Notre Dame and Ohio State are just bigger names. They weren't better teams.
Yeah,
I don't think that's an A&M bias. I think that
I think that's a fact,
especially when you played an all SEC schedule, right? Yeah. But that said, I don't know if there's if anyone's saying, okay, Alabama. I think A&M has learned, for the most part, its fan base have learned that just looked at trying to win the next game, especially when you get into SEC play, because like I said, there's going to be a game you're going to lose probably that you didn't expect to lose. Yeah. And maybe if you get into November and you think you can get there, then maybe you start hearing more about that. But A&M in the past has had that. Last year they had a chance coming into November. If they win those last 2 games, they were at a chance to win both of them. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of ifs. And if Auburn doesn't lose that game on the last play of the game to Alabama, then A&M would have been in there. They were that close. So, and I can remember one year, I guess it was 2016. We've talked about it before. They went to Mississippi State, ranked 4th in the first poll, and they faded in November. So they've done better in November until last year under Fisher. And maybe Jimbo this year it's really going to turn, and he's going to be A&M's version of Steve Spurrier.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. It's just the stopwatch just comes up. I hate it because we got to get you on in a slot. But I'll tell you what, right now, you can feel it. College football's here, folks. Olin Buchanan, tell them how they can follow you.
Follow us on TexAgs.com. That's TexAgs, an abbreviated version of Texas Aggies, TexAgs.com. We're the premier outlet for all things Texas A&M sports. You can follow us at that same name on Twitter, or you can follow me at Olin Buchanan on Twitter. And if you're watching this, you see my name, so now you know how to spell it.
Absolutely. Great stuff. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Central as well, every Monday through Saturday. Go out and help somebody with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Most often, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And remember, you live in the greatest country in the world, folks. Be proud of it. Be excited. And we're ready for tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.